Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. Yes, we're back again looking at the sanding, the bench sander for sanding down and grinding, whatever you want to call it, the interface for our hub and strut, or more pointedly, the bolt that goes through the hub into the strut. I have talked myself into, I think, the method that, or the item that I want to use. Having touched on these other items in the background here and shown in another video the other options that aren't shown here, I concluded with saying about using a small section of 25mm square box section, or even 20mm square. And it came as a result of going through all these other iterations or ideas, and out of the blue, just by making a passing comment, I thought, oh, maybe that's actually not a bad idea. So I went out to the garage and got my vernier caliper out and mic'd up a few things and thought, well, this will actually work. Not only is it straightforward, it's going to be cheaper, or more economical if you want to say it that way, easier, probably more functional. For what reasons? Well, it's square for a kickoff and there's already a hole in it, so there's no need to worry about the drilling of a item and then cutting at a specific angle. And it's not round, which is one of the options over in the background here, but because it's square and because it's readily available and all of those things, I thought, well, that really does work. And in fact, some of the different sections will allow, say, one of our options, which is a 16mm rod, to fit in neatly, very neatly. I think the 20 by 20 box section, I think they've got a 1.2mm wall thickness, all that information allows a 16mm rod to fit in neatly, which is exactly what we want. And I'll explain why in a minute. A 25mm, which is my preferred box section size, has available a 3mm wall thickness. Now that's very, very strong. It's a chunky bit of metal. And it would be the item that I'd use, but it doesn't allow for a 16 or a 12 mil rod or bolt to fit in neatly, so we have to have some sort of interface between it, which is not too much of a problem. The reason we want that is because we want to be able to locate this interface, this washer, you could say, that centers itself, and we don't want it flopping around and then dropping down onto the bolt and just looking odd or just not functioning the way I like to think it should. So we go from here, so we assume that we've been able to grind it off to this angle, just slide it down, tickle it, cut it roughly to the angle within a whatever tolerance you can achieve, and then I'd probably have a side block on the edge of it too to keep it square, slide it down the inclined surface and get that last fine-tuning grind for the angle. Then we come back over to here, and as I said, these are the different iterations I go through, and I went down to the point of box section, and here I show an insert so that a 16mm rod would fit inside it and locate itself centrally so that it positions itself on the washer. Now this is now a 12mm rod, and what I've actually done again is shown a insert of some sort. I was thinking alkathene, but then I thought, well, alkathene, they come in pipes and tubes, what have you, don't you know, like irrigation pipes or polybutylene for plumbing. If we find the right one, and in this case a drip irrigation or a low pressure irrigation for garden, that fits over a 12mm bolt perfectly and gives enough of a bulking up of the bolt's diameter to locate pretty darn good inside the block that we've made. And I thought, well, that was just ideal. Couldn't get much better than that. So we'll be able, and there is another irrigation what we get in our country, so you're going to have to choose your own, of course. But there's a riser for putting on sprinkler heads, and while that's a little bit tight for the 16mm bolt, a quick drill out with a bit, metal cutting bit, to ream it out would allow the 16mm rod to go down inside it, and then it could fit inside our metal box section. And that means that we have got a very, very easily produced component here that fits inside the hub. And again, the reason I'm saying it is a good choice is that the inner curve of the hub will interface on these two edges, self-aligning vertically, so it doesn't twist either way, because these two surfaces are hitting at the same time. And with the insert, whether it be a solid block like I've shown here, just for clarity, or a tube slipped over the end of the pipe, or sorry, the actual bolt or threaded rod, will locate it. So now we can replace this, which I said was my preferred option because of the way it nests in, with something like this. So if I can I'll just pause it and I'll replace these items with our bolt, or this assembly here with the square box section, and I'll get straight back to you, so don't go away. Righty ho, we're back again after a wee bit of fluffing around, and I've inserted now 2 rods into the timber, slipped over the interface. Now this is not to size or anything as far as the depth goes, it could be quite a bit smaller, but it's representative. Got the bolts in there. We have our socket available to be slipped over still from the outside, because the shaft itself will clear even if the socket won't, so we can slip it on. Hopefully there'll be no interference of the other nuts as we go round for the, say, the hex, where we've got a hex situation with these struts. But in short order, we could make up these, use them for the 2 situations, whether it be for a bolt or even the interface of the construction screw. And we've got, I think, a viable, a functioning attachment that is both simple and robust. And it needs to function well, because if in my paranoia I'm correct, in that leg roof interface, or the hub, where they interact, or rather they transition from one to another, this bolt, the bottom bolt, there's going to be a lot asked of it. So therefore we want to be able to have a no compromise as far as we can situation there, or capability there. A bit messily worded, but yeah, I think you get my point. So now we've got our, I think, our working model to go forward with. The only question is, do I keep all the holes drilled in the steel hub at the same height, or do I alter the heights, which means altering the heights on the struts, because the struts themselves are at different heights. So if I try to keep them, say, for instance, 25mm down from the top of the strut, for consistency's sake, that would by necessity mean at a different height on the hub for each version of the strut. But by keeping it at the same height, say 20-25 millimeters down on the hub, you'd have to have a specific point on the timber. The question is, which is easiest to drill? Oh, the timber. Well, that's where you'd make the alterations. I suppose I've answered my own question, haven't I? It would be easier to drill them all at 20 millimeters here, determine what the distance is down for each strut. That defines that strut. Bang them in there. If it's 20 millimeters down here, it will be 25 or so here. Yeah, I think that's answered the question. Okay, so the next video will be looking at that point, perhaps a little bit more in depth, and that'll be the next step forward. Rightio. I think that was successful, hopefully, and a step forward. Rightio, I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.